my favorite part of the whole series is when we're doing our prep for that, interview, and the three of us are sitting there talking about, like, what if you get him? What if you don't get him? What can we do? What's our game plan? And the audience loved that too. They felt like they were in on it right there with us. But Brian, you were there. We worked on this series for years, which you can tell from the changing hairstyles of MK throughout the whole thing. But we couldn't find him. We hired how many private investigators? We moved heaven and earth to find this guy, and we were unable to. And for most of the series, we thought it wasn't going to happen. We were thrilled that Megyn Wright agreed to sit with us. We thought that was the best we were going to do. And then maybe you could give the audience a little backstory on how we actually did wind up finding him.
Well, his mom lived in New Jersey. She has since passed, by the way. Several months ago, she passed away. But we had talked to her, Mary and I, through her doorway. She wouldn't come out and talk to us. She was afraid of being photographed, I guess. And she made it clear that he was somewhere in northern New Jersey. And she kind of gave a hint at a couple of towns. But the real humdinger was a private investigator from Kansas City, Mikkel Lund, helped find an obituary of a woman named Lisa Gallo. This woman, at the bottom of the obituary, it mentions her survivors and her, her mother or stepfather or what have you. And at the bottom is and her domestic partner, John Tanko. Now, there are not that many John Tankos in New Jersey. Frankly, in northern New Jersey, there's only one. And we figured out, Mary and I figured out where did this woman live? So we went to the house that she last lived in before she died. And as we continued to do reporting, I met up with a man who lived in that house, and he told me, John did live here. We kicked him out months ago. They kicked him out of that house for lighting fires in the backyard.
So they claimed.
I said, well, where? Yes. So he said, yeah, this is what the man said. The man said that he was lighting fires and it was becoming a problem. And he was a little erratic behavior, is what he said. Then, again, in this group of friends or people that lived in that house, somebody gave me a tip that they didn't have the address, but they knew that it was on a cul-de-sac. And at the end of the cul-de-sac, not far from a diner, there'll be a couple of horses. And so I made, of course I made several trips out there. And this one trip, I walked down the street, the cul-de-sac, and a dog starts barking like nuts, crazy at me. And I don't know where this dog is, but I don't like, a barking dog is not going to be, can be a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But it also attracted attention to me, wandering down this street. Well, guess who pops his head out from behind the fence, that big fence that you guys were looking through when we shot? There he was. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's him. So he says to me, can I help you? And I said, well, because he lives with a woman named Lisa. I hadn't really planned on being confronted by him. I really hadn't. I was just scoping and seeing what cars were in the driveway, et cetera, and the neighbors and what have you. And I said, well, there's a John and Lisa on this block. I'm trying to find John and Lisa. And he literally looks me in the eye and immediately lies and says, oh, John and Lisa, you got to go end of the block and go all the way down. He's sending me away. He doesn't want me to know where John and Lisa lives. And it's him. Now, listen, gosh. I've never heard his voice, but it was him because I've seen enough of his mugshots. And he was wearing a little beanie. And I'm like, oh my God. So then I went to the diner, which wasn't that far away, and called our executive producer, and I was shaking because I was like, it was him. He's never been videotaped, or Even the video
we had
of him
no
in court,
footage of him. That was one of our problems.
it's the back of his
Thinking
yeah.
about how we were going to produce the episodes talking about him, but not with him. There's no B-roll. All we had was mugshots of him over the years because he had done such a good job of staying off camera. Keep going.
And being incarcerated for something else right after the kidnapping, a burglary, I believe, or absconding, what have you. He was locked away, so, and when he got out, the media was gone, and, and then he made his way back east a couple years later, I guess. But the only video of him is basically the back of his head in a courtroom.
In court. Yeah, it was such a big deal. Couldn't believe it. We really thought, all right, we're just not going to get him. And then thanks to Brian's efforts and the efforts of others we hired prior to that, we eventually got on the trail and found him. And so that was half the battle and really led to the most interesting, I think, piece of the entire show, which was ultimately the confrontation between the two of us with Bill in the backyard. Brian was there back in the van, and just a crazy day. I mean, Bill and I met at that diner right around the corner before we went over there. And without getting too specific, we had a bit of a briefing from law enforcement, Bill, that had us both very worried about what we might be walking into. And we started second guessing like the protocols we had settled on and whether basically you could keep me safe and whether we had done enough to make sure this could go off without a hitch.
Yeah, first, Doug, your loving husband, he had a phone call with me and said, listen, nothing happens to my wife. You understand? That was like a couple of nights before. I'm like, 10 for that. So when we were doing the pregame, if you will, in the diner, and by chance, the sergeant walked in with his driver, and I got pulled to the side. And as you described, can you handle what may come your way? And then that made me tilt my head. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. Don't worry. Don't worry. There was a little tension there.
We got a lot more concerned in a very short time about what we might be walking into. And so when you see us there on the outside of the house, we are very much like, okay, this needs to be handled just right. One thing we had definitely concluded was I was not going in alone. I was going in with Bill, who knows how to handle himself in any threatening situation. What will the effect of the sparring between President Trump and the Federal Reserve be? Can the Fed take the right action at the right time? Or are we going to be looking at a potential economic slowdown? And what does this mean for your savings? Consider diversifying with gold through Birch Gold Group. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation, global uncertainty, and high inflation. And Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or an old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or just buy some gold to keep in your safe. First, get educated. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. Just text MK to the number 989898. Again, text MK to 989898 and consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. So if the Fed cannot stay ahead of the curve for the country, at least you can stay ahead for yourself. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.